I still remember the first rule she told me that afternoon. What happens in this room stays in this room. It sounded like something meant to calm me, but the way she said it, quiet, certain, felt more like a warning. And from that moment, I knew I should have walked away. It was late, close to closing time at the wellness center. The last clients were leaving. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus oil and rain. I had booked a last-minute session after a long week at the warehouse. My shoulders were locked tight, my mind heavier. The receptionist gave me a knowing smile as she handed me the form. "You got lucky," she said. "She never takes walk-ins." Her name was Clara, and she was older, mid-30s, maybe 40. Confident posture, calm voice, the kind that could silence a room. When she appeared at the end of the hallway, dim light from the salt lamps traced her outline. "You're my last client," she said. "Hope you don't mind staying a bit after hours." I told her I didn't. That was my first mistake. The massage room was warm and dim, filled with quiet instrumental music that almost hid the storm outside. Rain tapped against the windows in a slow, steady rhythm. She motioned to the table. "You can leave your things there. I'll give you a moment." Then she stepped out, closing the door with a soft click that somehow sounded final. I remember staring at the folded towel, the faint steam of the diffuser, the small red light of the clock counting down the session. Everything felt rehearsed except the air itself. It felt charged. When she came back, her expression had changed. Professional still, but softer, more focused. "Any areas giving you trouble?" she asked. "My back mostly," I said. "Been lifting boxes all week." She nodded. "We'll start there. Just breathe normally. Don't fight it." Her hands were precise, strong, almost clinical at first. But something about the silence between us started to stretch. The rain grew louder, the light dimmer. My pulse filled the room louder than the music. Every movement felt deliberate, each pause long enough to mean something. "Too much pressure?" she asked quietly. "No," I said, though my voice came out unsteady. She smiled faintly, barely visible in the dim light, and said, "Good, just let go. No one's going to interrupt." That was the second rule she gave me, no interruptions. But it wasn't true. A knock sounded at the door. 2 short taps. She froze, hands hovering mid-motion. I heard muffled voices in the hallway. Another employee, maybe the janitor. Clara pressed a finger to her lips, motioning me to stay quiet. The air went still. After a few seconds, footsteps faded away. She exhaled softly and whispered, "They think we're closed already." Then, almost to herself, "We should be." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I nodded. The silence that followed was heavier now. The rhythm of her movements slowed, almost thoughtful. "You're holding a lot of tension," she said finally, her tone quieter, less detached. "You don't release easily, do you?" I didn't answer, because she was right. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled. The diffuser light flickered, throwing shadows across the walls. The whole world felt reduced to the sound of rain, her voice, and the steady pulse in my ears. She stepped back, resting her hands on the table edge. "Next time," she said softly, "you should schedule an earlier session. It's safer that way." "Safer?" I asked. She didn't explain. Instead, she reached for the clipboard, glanced at the clock, and said, "We still have 10 minutes. Then she looked straight at me, something unreadable behind her calm. "Do you want to keep going?" For a second, I thought about saying no, about getting up, getting dressed, walking out. But I didn't move. The rain hit harder. The lights dimmed again. She waited for my answer, fingers resting lightly on the table. Then, when I nodded, she reached for the oil again, her voice barely a whisper. "All right then, we'll finish this properly." And just as her hands found their place again, the sound of keys jingled in the hallway. Someone locking up for the night. The door handle twitched. Clara's eyes met mine. "Don't move," she whispered. The door creaked open an inch. The door never opened all the way, just enough for a sliver of light to cut across the floor. A voice from the hall said, "Clara, you still in there?" Her answer came steady, calm. "Just cleaning up." The light vanished. The sound of the lock echoed again, and the hallway fell silent. When she finally turned back, her shoulders dropped slightly, but her voice had changed. "That was my manager," she said quietly. "He does rounds before leaving." Then she smiled half to herself. "Guess we're really the last ones now." I nodded, still half-dressed on the table. The tension in the air wasn't gone. It had just shifted shape. She handed me a bottle of water. "Take your time," she said. "It's not good to rush after deep work." I thought it was over, but as I reached for my shirt, she added softly, "If you like, you can come back tomorrow. I do private sessions on Sundays." Off the record. The phrase "off the record" stuck with me. Something about the way she said it, quiet, deliberate, felt like an invitation and a warning at the same time. The next day, the city looked washed clean after the storm. I told myself it was just a massage, nothing more. But I still found myself walking the same street, turning down the same narrow lane toward the wellness center. The sign on the door read "Closed for maintenance." I almost turned away until I saw her inside, rearranging the candles. She looked up, saw me through the glass, and smiled. "Didn't expect you to take me literally," she said when she opened the door. "You said Sunday," I replied. "I did." Her tone softened. "Then come in." "But you didn't see me open this door." "Understood." That was her third rule: silence outside the room. The lights were lower this time. No music, just the hum of the air vent and the faint sound of traffic beyond the rain-streaked window. She had changed into dark gray, almost unrecognizable in the half-light. On a small side table stood a single hourglass, sand dripping slowly through the glass neck. She caught my gaze on it and said, "It helps me keep track of time when the clock's off. When it's empty, the session's done." It was the first symbol of whatever this was, an hourglass that measured more than minutes. As she began, her movements were slower than before, more deliberate. Outside, someone walked past the building, footsteps crunching gravel, then stopped. We both froze. "Delivery," a man's voice called faintly through the glass. She didn't answer. We waited, silent, until the steps moved on. She exhaled. "Every time I try to take a break, the world barges in." "Maybe that's why people come here," I said. "To escape it." She smiled faintly, not looking up. "Maybe that's why I stay late." The hourglass ticked down in silence. Her focus was absolute, the rhythm almost hypnotic. I tried to think of something ordinary to say, anything that would break the current, but words failed. Every sound felt amplified. The soft rustle of linen, the creak of the floor, her calm, steady breathing. "Most people talk during sessions," she said after a while. "Do you prefer that?" She shook her head. "No, I prefer when they listen." The sand was nearly gone. She noticed and sighed. "Almost time." Then she paused, her hand hovering midair. "You're still tense," she said quietly. "Here." Before I could answer, a phone buzzed on the counter. Hers. The screen lit the room faintly. A name flashed, Ethan, manager. She turned it face down, ignoring it. The buzzing stopped, then started again. Her jaw tightened. "He likes to make sure I'm not using company space after hours," she muttered. "If he finds out, I'm done here." "Should I go?" I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Not yet." The phone kept ringing, then finally went silent. She stood still for a few seconds, then stepped back. "All right," she said softly. "That's enough for today." But she didn't move toward the door. Instead, she looked at the empty hourglass and turned it upside down again. The sand began to fall anew. "Next Sunday," she said, almost a whisper. "Same time. Don't tell anyone I open early." Her tone was gentle but absolute, as if sealing an agreement neither of us had meant to make. I nodded, uncertain what exactly I'd agreed to. Outside, the rain had started again, softer this time, like an echo of the first night. As I reached for the door, her voice stopped me. "Oh, Anne." I turned. She held up the hourglass, a faint smile on her lips. "If anyone asks, you didn't see this either." The lights flickered once. Then she locked the door behind me. A week passed, though it didn't feel like one. Every evening I caught myself glancing at the clock around the same hour the sand had started falling last time. By Sunday, I'd convinced myself I was only returning to thank her. That was the lie I told walking back through the narrow lane. The wellness center looked dark again. Same closed sign, same smell of rain. But when I pressed the bell, the door opened a crack. "You came early," Clara said. "You said same time." I did. I didn't think you'd actually remember. Inside, the air felt heavier, thicker with lavender. The lights were even dimmer than before. The hourglass already sat waiting, half filled with gold sand. She locked the door, turning the key slowly. "They installed new cameras in the hallway," she murmured. "So if anyone asks, I'm doing inventory. You're a delivery, nothing else." That line sounded rehearsed, but her eyes didn't match the calm. For the first time, she looked nervous. We worked in silence for several minutes. Outside, thunder rumbled again. Another storm rolling in. Just as her rhythm steadied, a sharp buzz cut through the room. The front intercom. She froze. "That can't be." The bell rang again. She hurried to the monitor by the door. On the screen, a man in a raincoat stood outside, tapping the glass. I saw his badge when the light flickered. "Ethan." Her manager. Clara turned to me, voice barely audible. "Go into the side room. Don't speak." I slipped behind the curtain, into a cramped storage nook filled with towels and oils. Through the gap, I watched her open the door just wide enough to talk. "Ethan," she said evenly, "I thought you were out of town. Forgot my keys. Figured you'd be here. You're always here after hours." He laughed lightly, stepping forward. She blocked the doorway. "Systems down," she said quickly. "I was fixing the diffuser. Nothing else." He peered inside. "Funny. I thought I heard voices." "You didn't," she said. Her tone had steel now. After a long pause, he sighed. "All right, just lock up properly. We can't afford another complaint." Then he left. The door shut. Silence. When I stepped back out, Clara's hands trembled slightly. She pressed her palms to her temples, then exhaled. "That," she said, "was almost the end of both of us." "Both of us?" I asked. She met my eyes for the first time that night. "You think they'd believe I was giving a client a free session on a closed day?" The hourglass was still running, the sand nearly gone. She looked at it, then at me. "Maybe we should stop," she said quietly, "before it turns into something we can't explain." I should have agreed. Instead, I said, "Maybe it already has." Her expression changed, just slightly, but enough. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was acknowledgement. She reached toward the hourglass, hesitated, then didn't flip it. Instead, she turned it on its side, halting the sand completely. "There," she whispered. "No more time counting us." The gesture felt like a confession, not in words, but in defiance. Outside, rain hit the window harder. Inside, the room seemed smaller. Her phone buzzed again. Same name on the screen. She stared at it, then turned it off completely. Ethan's persistent, I said. He's my ex, she replied simply. Technically still my boss. That's why this can't exist. She stepped closer, voice lower. I shouldn't ask this, but you'll keep quiet, won't you? I already have, I said. That was the moment everything shifted. She smiled, softly this time, tired but real. Then she reached for something on the shelf. A small folded note tucked under the bottle of oil. She placed it beside my bag. Take that, she said. Don't read it here. I looked down at it. Plain white paper, no name. The last grain of sand in the sideways hourglass glittered under the lamp. When I looked back up, she was already unlocking the door. Next time, she said, come through the side entrance. I'll leave it open 5 minutes early. The storm outside had turned into a downpour. She watched me go, hands still on the light switch. And just before she turned it off, she said softly, almost lost in the rain, don't lose that note. It's your way back in. The note stayed in my jacket pocket all week. I didn't open it until Thursday night, long after I told myself I wouldn't. It was simple, just an address, not the wellness center, and one short line beneath it. Saturday 7 p.m., no calls. That last part looked more like a command than a reminder. Saturday came faster than I expected. I told my friends I had an extra shift at work, turned off my phone, left it face down on my desk like an alibi. The street Clara had written was on the edge of town, where old apartments leaned over each other like tired buildings keeping secrets. Her door was half open, light spilling out in a warm line. She lived above a small bookstore, the kind that never seemed to have customers. I knocked once. It's open, she said from inside. The apartment didn't look like hers. It looked like a place she'd borrowed. Stacks of books, no photos on the walls, just a few candles on the counter, and that familiar smell of eucalyptus oil. And there, on the coffee table, was the same hourglass. Only now it was filled with dark sand. You kept it, I said. She smiled faintly. It doesn't belong to the clinic. I bought it years ago. I like how it doesn't hurry anyone. She gestured to the couch. Sit. I made tea, not exactly the professional setup you're used to. Her tone was softer, tired maybe. The mask she wore at work was gone. After a long silence, she said, You asked last time why I stay late. The truth is, I don't like going home. Not since the divorce. She looked at the window instead of me. Ethan wasn't always my manager. We opened that place together. When it fell apart, he kept the business. I kept the hours. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. She took a sip of tea, set the cup down, and met my eyes. I shouldn't have called you here. It's not fair. You risk more than I do. I don't think that's true, I said quietly. You could lose everything. She smiled, a tired sort of smile. Maybe that's already happened. A faint vibration cut through the silence. Her phone, on the counter. The name Ethan glowed again. She stared at it until it stopped. He's been asking questions, she said. Someone told him they saw me with a client after hours. If he proves it, he'll use it to end what's left of my license. So you called me here anyway? I needed to know if last time meant anything to you, she said. Or if it was just. She stopped herself. The hourglass ticked softly between us. She turned it upside down, and the dark sand began to fall. That's how long we have, she whispered. Then you have to leave. We talked about everything except what we meant. About her ex, about my job, about nothing at all. And yet the silence between words said everything. Then 3 hard knocks at the door. Both of us froze. Clara? A man's voice called. You forgot your keys again, Ethan. She mouthed, "Don't move," then crossed the room, forcing calm into her voice. You shouldn't be here. I came to talk, he said. You've been avoiding me. Now's not a good time. He tried the handle. Who's in there with you? I could hear the lock strain. The hourglass on the table trembled, scattering a line of dark sand across the wood. Clara pressed her palm against the door. Leave, Ethan, she said, voice shaking now. You lost the right to ask me that. After a tense pause, his footsteps retreated down the stairs, slow and deliberate. The sound lingered like thunder rolling away. Clara turned, breathless. He'll be back, she said. He doesn't let go of things easily. I stood, uncertain. Then maybe I should go before he. She shook her head. No. If you leave now, he'll see you. The hourglass had almost emptied again. She reached out and steadied it, tracing the glass with her fingertip. Funny, she said softly. You came here because of this thing. Now it's the only thing keeping us still. Why keep it? I asked. Because time runs out whether we want it to or not, she said. Then she looked up. But we get to choose what we do before it does. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, a car door slammed, echoing up from the street. I could see a figure in a raincoat standing by the bookstore entrance, Ethan watching the windows. Clara noticed too. He's waiting. What are you going to do? I asked. She looked at the hourglass one more time, then at me. Flip it, she said. If you're willing to come back. The last grains fell. I turned the glass over. The sand began to fall again, marking the start of something neither of us could name. Outside, the figure finally walked away, but his shadow stayed behind. When I went back the next weekend, the bookstore below her apartment was closed for good. A paper sign in the window read, "For lease." I almost turned away, thinking she'd moved on, until the upstairs light blinked twice. One short, one long. Her signal. Inside, the air was heavy with the same scent, but everything else had changed. Boxes stacked by the door. Shelves half empty. The hourglass waited on the table again, this time upright, untouched. You're leaving, I said. She nodded. Ethan filed a report. If I stay, they'll suspend my license. So I resigned before he could. The words hit harder than I expected. So this is goodbye? Maybe. She looked around the room. Or a pause. I haven't decided yet. For a while we said nothing. Rain light slid down the windows in slow silver lines. Then she added, He thinks I took money from clients off the record. He has proof I met you. If he calls you, you'll have to deny it. I reached into my pocket, took out the folded note she'd given me. I already did. Her gaze softened. You lied for me? I turned off my phone. Didn't answer anyone for 2 days. That's a bigger risk than you realize, she whispered. But thank you. She walked to the window, fingers tracing the frame. I spent 10 years helping people let go of their pain. Somehow I forgot how to let go of mine. When she turned back, her eyes were calm again. If you came here for me, then you deserve the truth. I'm leaving town for a while. There's a clinic by the coast that offered me a room. No pass there. Outside, a car door slammed. Footsteps on the stairs. She froze. He wasn't supposed to find this place, she murmured. The next few seconds stretched thin. A shadow crossed under the door, then lingered. We heard a key rattle against metal. She snatched the hourglass and set it on its side again, halting the sand. Go to the back balcony, she said. I'll stall him. I hesitated. If you need help, I need you gone, she cut in softly. If he sees you, it's over. The door handle turned. I moved through the dark hall to the balcony and waited, listening to their voices overlap in the next room. Sharp, controlled, filled with old history. Then silence. Then the sound of the front door slamming. When I stepped back inside, she was leaning against the wall, breathing hard. "He knows," she said simply. "I can't stay another day." A train horn echoed somewhere beyond the river. She handed me a small envelope, plain, unmarked. "If you ever need to find me, open this by the water. But only if you're sure." What's in it? Direction. Maybe a mistake. She looked at the hourglass one last time and flipped it upright. "I don't want to stop time anymore," she said. "I want to see where it takes us." That was the closest thing to a confession either of us would make. We stood by the door while the sand began to fall again, and for once neither of us tried to measure how much was left. A month later, I drove to the coast with the envelope still sealed. The clinic she'd mentioned was real, a small wood-framed place overlooking the bay. A woman at the desk told me Clara was on a retreat. No dates given. I walked down to the shore and finally opened the envelope. Inside was only a single thing: a tiny pinch of dark sand and a note. "If you see this, you waited too long." The wind took the sand from my hand and carried it back toward the sea. In the distance, a door of light opened in the clouds, narrow, bright, and closing fast.